What about privacy by non-state actors? They now say that Facebook and WhatsApp are like quasi-monopolies. You can't do without Facebook, you can't do without WhatsApp. I don't agree. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Twitter, but I'm very happy surviving. But then the point is, 99% of people have Facebook. It's a social networking site. You have a business networking site. The argument for WhatsApp and Facebook, they say WhatsApp is a messaging service. In WhatsApp, mind you, the message is encrypted. Even the London terrorism, they refused, they said we are not able to give you what happens between the calls. So every WhatsApp call, every WhatsApp letter is completely encrypted, end-to-end encryption. It cannot be revealed to anybody. So WhatsApp says it's the most safe messaging service. Now Facebook. Now the proposal is, the submission to the Supreme Court is, we get large amount of data. What do we use it for? Facebook is free, WhatsApp is free, other sites are free, but how do these sites sustain themselves? There must be a commercial backbone to sustain this kind of manpower and things. So they say that we use it for targeted advertising, and the question arises, what is your right to privacy in such a situation? There the argument is, which has been a very good observation of Rohinton Nariman in that, he says, whatever you choose to put in the public domain is not covered by the right to privacy. You have to use it with a slight amount of caution. Now say for example, if I go to Google, and today suppose you go to Google and say I want to see, say for example, resorts in Jaipur. Tomorrow you will get on your, when you pop up, you will get hotels in Jaipur, flights to Jaipur and so on. So this is called what is called targeted advertising. There are tools which say that, there will be a contract with Make My Trip or some Taj hotels that if anybody is asking for Rajasthan, put our ad on the thing. Now, is there a violation of right to privacy? The fact that I want to go to Jaipur, the argument is, in all these matters with non-state actors, privacy should be governed entirely by contracts. And that's why if you see Facebook, they'll say agree, then after 15 days they say I still agree, and after 30 days you have to say agree 3 times and say so. And there's a Lord Denning judgment saying if you give me a 100-word document and say agree doesn't mean anything. So now I think WhatsApp and Facebook, they give you the 14, 15 salient points which you must agree. So now it's left to the audience to see. I personally feel that as far as the non-state actors are concerned, it's a matter of contract. It's a matter of consensus. As long as they tell you up front what they're going to do with it, it's perfectly fine. I look at it this way. Everything you part with, you get a benefit. I want an insurance policy of say 50 lakhs. I have to go for a complete medical examination. My medical records are with the insurance company. But that doesn't mean they can use it further. They have to stop with that. If I want a 1 lakh policy, I don't need any report at all. I can just go for an ordinary policy. So everything has got a give and take. When I part with it by contract, then I can't complain about lack of privacy. At least as of now, Justice Nariman's judgment makes it very clear. What you have voluntarily parted with will not be covered by the right to privacy. Take an autobiography. I can choose, it's part of my decisional autonomy. I can have a tell-all autobiography or I can have a limited autobiography. Both are entirely within my domain. So I'll conclude my talk by saying we are at the cusp of a very, very international, a very, very landmark event, because there is, Justice Kaul has flagged the concern of Big Brother, Orwell's Big Brother, with so much of Aadhaar. You see, the whole difficulty with Aadhaar is, if it's seeded with every bank account, seeded with every phone, every school admission. I got a letter from Roorkee. The guy could not get his MTech thesis admitted because he didn't have an Aadhaar card. So I'm just saying that it is across the board, everything and everything you will have to get an Aadhaar card. And there was a cartoon in the Times of India. A man is about to be hanged and the person comes in and says, stop, stop, he doesn't have Aadhaar. So that was the extent of the Aadhaar. So now let us see what ultimately the Supreme Court says. And the topic is right to privacy in a digital age. My personal belief is, at the end of the day, whichever age we live in, the right of privacy, like the right to life, the right to be let alone, will always be present. And as Lord Brandis put it beautifully, he's saying at the end of the day, the most precious right, the most sacred right, the most sacred space is the right of an individual to be and become what he wants to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very interesting talk. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. So, without further ado, what I will do is, while Mr. Datar has a sip of water, I'll take 4 or 5 questions, and then he can answer 4 or 5 questions at a time. Request, please keep the questions brief. Or if you don't have a question, you have an observation, please keep the observation brief, so that everybody else also gets a chance. So do we have mics? Okay. So if anybody has a question, they can raise their hand, and then I will start from. Okay. One, Purnima. Sir. So if you want to sit, I'll take 4 or 5 questions, and then we can. Okay.
Sir, on the issue of digital age that you said it's a matter of contract, isn't it much more nuanced than that? I mean, for example, when my child was born, somebody said, congratulations on Facebook. And the next time I logged in, I had diaper advertisements immediately.
Yeah.
I had not revealed that, I was a mother, but it was already there because somebody else had said so.
You're on Facebook, is it?
Yes. So, it's not my intention to reveal. So, I think it's just more nuanced than just...
Yeah, well, I'll just say I'm appearing for Facebook, but doesn't matter. Yeah, Mr. Sybil is appearing for WhatsApp, and I'm appearing for Facebook. See, the point, I asked the same question, because my wife told me the same thing. The moment you say something, like you said, happy birthday, to the child, and they'll say, I think of diaper. For example, like, you may mention something about photography, you'll get camera advertisements. Now, I believe what the people tell me is there are threshold levels of settings. You can say, don't reveal at all, reveal this. So I don't know what privacy setting you have set yourself. And the idea is, what they say is, this is highly beneficial. Now, that's the argument of Facebook. Now, suppose there's a company, you said diaper, you got diaper ads. Now, just imagine for a diaper company, they will send it to you. They will not send it to me or Mr. Acharya or Mr. Naganan, because we don't need that ad. So they save that money because it will only go to a targeted audience. So they've got an arrangement. For example, suppose you're in the market for a two-wheeler. They will not send you an ad, say, for example, for a truck or a high-end car. So they say the whole thing is targeted for the purpose of, and according to them, everybody knows that when you use Facebook, this information is going to go. And it's not just Facebook. You go to Flipkart, you go to Amazon. Like, you go to Amazon, you buy a book, immediately you'll get, would you also like to see, they'll give 5 books. Suppose I ask a book on, say, the history of Karnataka, they'll give me 5 other books on the history of Karnataka. So this is all what they call targeted advertising, and what is it called? Enhanced customer usage. That's a jargon they use. I don't know I'd like to know what the audience feels. You think that Facebook is right in, like she said about the baby, immediately she got diaper. Is there anything wrong? Is it a violation of privacy?
There's an extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was an article about this Facebook and other social media apps where they say that Facebook knows when you are bored, when you are depressed, bored. So they in fact have recommendations. They know more about you than yourself. Okay, so to that extent, and they make suggestions like, at when your say weakness is out there, probably you are willing to shop or splurge more. So they try to take this, probably,
See, I'll tell you what, one thing I'll tell you, I do not know what is the empirical evidence to show that they've analyzed 500 Facebook customers and they said she's depressed, he's elated, he's not so. And what is the basis of that data? I don't know what. You could be right, I don't know. But I'm just saying that empirically evidence, if I'm going to log on to a particular Facebook site, frankly, I'm handicapped because of Facebook. I've never used Facebook in my life, so I don't know. But I think that I don't see, if my wife is using Facebook to share photographs or to say something, I don't know if the person can know whether she's bored or she's listening and so on. I don't know.
Okay. I think we have one second. Kishore, there are a few hands here, then I'll come to this side. I'll go with the questions here first, 3 or 4 questions here, and then I'll come here.
Yeah. I don't know how far that is true, that, that if you're looking at your laptop, your photograph is being sucked in and sent out. I don't know whether it's possible to do that. I don't think it's possible.
Okay, please, can you raise your hand and then otherwise we'll just give, sorry, Vishnu, Rupa, and just, okay.
Sir, building on the theme of how you said it's with non-state actors, it's a matter of, contract. So do you think it's fair for a company to deny you their service altogether if you don't agree to their privacy policy? And I think under the reasonable security practices rules, they have that right. The rules do say that. But think about maybe not right now, but maybe in the future where WhatsApp is the primary mode of communication. If someone doesn't agree to their privacy policy, they can deny them their service, and essentially that person cannot use WhatsApp to communicate with 99% of the population. So to that extent, isn't that a little unfair for a person to be denied that service altogether? If yes, what could be the compromise?
Actually, what you've said is one question raised by the petitioner, that WhatsApp is like a quasi-monopoly. It's almost like a monopoly, therefore. But you see, the point is this. The argument on the other side is that WhatsApp is a messaging service. And why WhatsApp is popular is because it's free. When you send an SMS through a telephone service provider like Airtel or Vodafone, you get charged for it. And WhatsApp is free. Because of certain reasons, it costs them some money, but it is virtually free, and you only pay for the data usage and nothing more. But I think that, speaking for myself, not because I'm appearing for one of the parties, but I feel it's entirely a matter of contract. It's a matter of give and take. If you want the services of WhatsApp, see, for example, you got a WhatsApp group. You got, say, for your law school group, this group, all this comes at your fingertip. Just parting with 4 things, your phone number, your model of the phone, etc. I don't see what is the degree of harm in doing that. Similarly for Facebook or LinkedIn, if you can communicate with your relatives all over the world at no cost at all, no need to make an STD call, no need to make an ISD call, no need to write any letter. If you can do all at free, and all they say is just allow us to use that information for advertising, it's up to you to take a call.
Rupa?
Yeah.
Rupa and then Mr. Naganan.
So I actually, I think it's a great thing that's what's happening. It's just evolved from, those billboards that are placed appropriately. They've done a lot of research. And instead of placing it in this corner, they're placed in that corner. During rush hour, everybody sees it. It's your choice whether you want to buy that product or not. I don't see what the difference is between that and what is happening now. You have a choice not to buy the product. And I'm thinking that's how, life is evolving, and we have to evolve with it. So I agree with you. It's a private contract.
Facebook will be delighted to hear that. The other thing is, I'll tell you what, the other point, one other argument we've raised is, out of so many millions of Facebook, who has complained that their intimate data has been revealed through Facebook or Flipkart or Amazon or so on? They say there are certain protections they've got, they will not reveal that. And it's only for the purpose of targeted advertising.
Yeah, just a small comment. When Uber challenge to the regulations of the state government was there, one argument which our High Court heard and accepted was, he said that one of the regulations said that where you get on the taxi, where you get off the taxi, that has to be stored, and it should be available for state authorities if they need. That's the regulation. So the argument was that this is a serious violation of my right to privacy, because why should anybody know and keep a record of where I go and where I should come? Our answer was that if I go in a public transport, and Uber is a public transport vehicle, suppose you go in an aeroplane, you have to give your details. Suppose you go in a train and you buy a ticket, you have to give the details. What is wrong in having that information? So I think the exception to the rule which laid down by Supreme Court really is that if you opt to go into the public sphere, then I think your right of privacy is naturally curtailed, and I don't think there's any serious something
And
wrong.
talking of Uber, I'll tell you an example. Like, I have used Uber, and they ask you a question: should your location should be disclosed or not? And you can say allow, don't allow. So I put don't allow. Now my son has put allowed. Okay, and I remember some time back when in the thick of this privacy case, we went to a Murugan Idli center in Chennai. And as we entered, me, my wife, my son and my daughter entered, my son gets immediately a ping on the notification, says, "Good morning, Rishikesh. Welcome to Murugan. How do you find the restaurant? Rate it." So he's being tracked from which satellite God knows. And the moment he enters that particular restaurant, he's asked to rate that restaurant. So that's the way, it's some kind of an indirect surveillance. But as Naganan says, you opt for it. You say, okay, let people know where I am. So,
okay. I'm sorry. I need to go to that part of the audience, and then I'll come back. Kishore.
No, I'll ask you a question. Does it make any sense to link Aadhaar to bank? You tell me that later as a technocrat.
I'm more worried about telecom than bank. Bank is okay. I'm worried about Airtel. Because what videos I'm watching. No, but this issue about location and companies knowing where you're going. Now, there have been cases where internal people in Uber have harassed their own employees and contractors by knowing where a particular woman has traveled 4 days in a week. They've tracked that. They've actually physically abused the woman based on some patterns of her behavior. So I don't know if it is that simple. First of all, I don't think of Uber as public transport. I don't know if anybody outside the legal fraternity thinks about it as public transport. We think of it as private transport. We think of buses as public transport. So there is a challenge there. But the bigger issue, or the other issue for me about things like Facebook, the choice of pushing an ad for a diaper to a woman, in her late 20s who's been congratulated about a baby, so on and so forth, is not made by a human being. It's made by an algorithm. Yes. It's made by a system. Is that an attack on privacy? It's just a piece of software. I didn't tell anybody that you're going to have a baby. My software pushed an ad to you. So what's the problem? Now, taking that further, there will be lots of choices that systems are making. This is advertising. Tomorrow, choices about what car I buy, where I go for my insurance, whom I hang out with, what friends I make. I mean, the list of friends that it throws up. Somebody I haven't seen in 20 years suddenly pops up there. As a technical guy, I wonder, how did it know that I knew this person? How did it know that I went to meet a doctor last week to get my back checked? Those kinds of things become more worrying because that is automated. It's not human being. So I don't know how the legal process would even address
But I don't know whether worrying. For example, I'll just tell you this thing. My friend of mine was in Seattle and his friend works for Walmart. And I was fascinated to know that, in Walmart, everything is like an algorithm, as you say. And suppose they know, for example, that Bangalore is going to have heavy rains. Today is Friday. On Tuesday, they're going to have heavy rains from Tuesday. I believe the system will automatically send umbrellas to shops in Bangalore. So they'll know that this is going to happen in the weather and this is going to be the requirement. All done by algorithms. And that's what the other big difficulty in the Supreme Court is. They want to check on metadata. You see, but the whole difficulty is, as far as Supreme Court is concerned, as lawyers, I'm ignorant, the judge is ignorant, the lawyer is ignorant, and I don't want them to pass some orders which will hurt a lot of people. There could be a lot of collateral damage. That's why they formed the Sri Krishna Committee, and I think it's a matter for Parliament to ultimately decide. I'll tell you one more thing. Under Section 43A of the Information Technology Act, they have framed the 2011 rules, where they've got certain amount of what they call personal sensitive information, PSI, which can be protected. Now, according to them, it has to be of a higher threshold. Now, since we're working on this case in the EU itself, Germany has a higher threshold limit of data protection vis-a-vis the others. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions on this side? Sorry, before I go. There's at the back. One second. Use the mic, please.
The question I had relates to data privacy when you talk about non-state actors, and you mentioned that really the rationale is, ability to mine data for advertising. But what about fake news which feeds biases and has, basically destabilized democracies?
See, I'll tell you what, I don't want to get into fake, because see, these are like this person who was this Uber employee who was using that data to track a woman and harass her on someone. These are all aberrations which really don't get into the main problem.
Aberration which resulted in, probably the election of, the most powerful man on earth.
Yeah. I know. But you see, I don't think that's a issue of privacy and the fake news may be a case where the Russians give fake news. No, I don't know whether we are talking of Facebook. I mean, the fake news in the Russian context and Trump's election. Facebook gave false news with regard to Trump. Huh? Yes, yeah. Maybe they marketed Trump better. What you call fake news. Anyway, I think disasters happen. So.
Okay, Aditya, then Yajas, and then Samir.
I'm just trying to make a case against the targeting marketing by actually taking it outside the virtual space. And I think the effect is accentuated when you think of it in the normal market space. The same diaper example, just think of it as walking down the street and you're talking to your friend, and there are 10 people start surrounding you and start saying, here, buy the diaper. I'm really looking at this not so much as targeted marketing as much as it is actually eavesdropping, where I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm being eavesdropped on, and that is being used to invade my privacy. And it really goes back to the classical notion of the right to being just left alone. And I think that is where this invading, today it's fine, it's just selling diapers. In 1926, the horrors were, we couldn't foresee them. I think standing in 2017, I don't know what this eavesdropping can lead to some other day. So I just think we are giving chance for an Orwellian 1984. So I don't know.
I see, that's a point of view. I agree. There are people who think that could be an Orwellian 1984. Now I'll tell you what, as far as Facebook is concerned, it's like you said, when you're walking down a street. Now you may choose not to tell your person about that impending pregnancy, so people around you come and say, and you say that instead of physically people coming to you, things are bombarding. Now, every Facebook user knows that he's going to be subject to advertising. Every Google user knows that when he opens Google, he's going to get on the right-hand side pop-up advertisements. So you just have what you call a cost-benefit ratio. Is your privacy so important that you don't want to be bombarded with ads? Then don't use Facebook. Now, I'm not using Facebook because I don't want this thing, but I personally feel it's a waste of time. But that's my choice. I'm not on Facebook. I've never seen a Twitter in my life. There's nothing wrong. Now there are ads and items saying that I saw, I think in Times of India. You see Times of India on the op-ed page, you'll get the most astonishing thing, that if you eat tomatoes, you'll get knee pain or some kind of rubbish like that, and that people beyond 40 start thinking of women at the age of 20. Some kind of rubbish keeps on coming in Times of India. So one other thing was, and my wife showed it to me, people who don't use Facebook have got strong antisocial behaviors and are dangerous people. So that is obviously planted by Facebook.
So I'm sorry, if I may just take
we'll come back to you if there is more time.
Thank you.
But this time, the actual report in Times of India that non-Facebook users are antisocial and...
I'll come to you guys. You just...
A small observation and a quick question was, firstly, we talked about the diaper advertisements a lot. I read a report and there was quite a bit of news recently or some time back about how retailers now can predict based on your consumption patterns. They can tell you that you're pregnant before you realize it. So a month and a half after you're pregnant, based on what you've eaten, where you went and shopped, the mood that you displayed, they can probably tell better than you can. A quick observation. The second point is,
where did you get that information?
Fortunately in the newspapers.
I mean, you don't need any more pregnancy tests, just dial your number.
So you had mentioned, and you briefly mentioned it about how our laws in India for non-state actors, specifically on privacy laws, need to go beyond just sensitive information. And sensitive personal information today is only things like biometric information, bank account information, things like that. And it needs to evolve more than that, because like you said today, with the right software, just based on your name and where you were, on every Monday for the past 10 weeks, I can tell all kinds of things about you because the computer program, the algorithms that we have today are so powerful. So question to you is, do you think that the law, which is the forthcoming law on data privacy, will take us beyond that, sort of extend the whole framework to what we don't consider generally sensitive information, to include things like my name, my age, and my address? And can our economy support it? Can a system like India support that, where we require every company to get consent before collecting my address, before collecting my phone number, where they send that? Because today they don't need to. They don't need to ask me my permission to collect my phone number and my address. That's not sensitive, but they do require my consent to collect my blood group or my biometric information.
Well, I'll first of all mention one thing. One thing I find astonishing, because I've been meeting people and so on. People are very worried about the misuse of data by Flipkart, but they're not worried about the misuse of data by Aadhaar. That is the most worrisome thing. You see, I have no time. If you see Section 17, Section 47, Section 48 of the Aadhaar Act, there is absolutely no restriction on what they can use the data for. That is a more worrisome part of it. And not that I'm not pro-state, but I'm saying that's the larger concern we should have. See, today it's okay fine the government. Tomorrow if it's a rogue government. Now you got your Aadhaar card, all right? If you got your Aadhaar this thing, and if you're seeded to your number, and in a political rival situation, I can simply make sure your phone is disconnected. I can have a system where these Aadhaar numbers the phone will not be used. You can do that. And there are so many other things, for example, there are cases where, in fact, I don't know if you know, if you're interested, I can say there's a very good IIT report by Delhi IIT on what are the defects in Aadhaar. And they say it can be tweaked. Now you take your digital fingerprint. What stops you from taking it away and using it else? That can be recorded, that can be stored. And in England, this footprint, this hand thumb impression was sought and was deleted, saying it's most dangerous. England thought about it and deleted. Now that's as far as Aadhaar is concerned. As far as non-state actors is concerned, because we are working at it very deeply, one issue is going to be the conflict between informational privacy and decisional autonomy. Now, can you make